All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this meeting to order. And before we begin tonight's meeting, I do want to take a moment to make special recognition tonight to our CAO, Mike Derricott, who has recently received a 10-year award from the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators for 10 years of municipal governance, being involved on the municipal level. So congratulations, Mike. And on behalf of council and CAMA, I'd like to make a special presentation to you. And Mike's been with us for, I think, just over 5 years now. So congratulations on your 10-year achievement.
Thank you very much.
And no mask?
Man, you must almost
So
be
you pay
40.
your dues and thank you.
What is it?
Thank you, Mike. So that was a 10-year service pin. And we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please, that the agenda for the August 18th, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted with the deletion of E1, the delegation, which was unable to attend tonight, and the additions of I1 and I2. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Had that one coming from Steve.
Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the July 21st, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Councillor Sherrard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. No delegations. We're going to go to reading of bylaws. Can I get a motion, please, that council give first reading to bylaw number 2249, being the non-residential property tax incentive bylaw? Councillor Bevan will make that motion, and we do have Mr. Passy here to walk us through what the change is in this bylaw.
Good evening. Sarah asked that I be here to present this this new old bylaw. Just wanted to repeal the old one, and one that passed, I think, just the last council meeting, just to make a clarification as to that it's all the tax incentives are on new building and not what was already there where there's new building going. This was done as a way, because it was such a new bylaw, it's just easier to have all of it all in one bylaw rather than have two separate bylaws with an amendment in one and the rest of it in another. This way was just to repeal the old one and just get a new one that has all the information in the same one.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get second reading of bylaw number 2249? Council Sorensen. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get placement for third, please? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get third reading to bylaw number 2249? Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion, please? The council adopt the amended municipal health and safety policy HS5 as presented. Councillor Byer will make that motion. We discussed this at committee. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council, in accordance with Alberta Regulation number 281, grant the Edson Golf Club property tax exemption status effective the 2021 tax year and be allowed this exemption for a maximum of 3 consecutive taxation years, 2021 to 2023 inclusive. Councillor Sherrard will make that motion, and Mr. Passy is with us here again. Go ahead.
This is just in accordance with the MGA section 362 and Alberta Regulation 281, allowing organizations and institutions that are in whole or in part by a nonprofit organization and meeting certain criteria for recreation or for amateur sports and things, similar to other applications we received in the previous months. This is just a renewal of their tax exemption that has been in place already.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to Mr. Passy, do you know what the total amount of the exemption is for, based on this year's tax amount?
Through the chair to Councillor Byer, I do not. It's not. It's as someone that's been exempt in the past. It's not going to take any effect going forward. it's all written. We have been collecting the taxes for that anyway, so it's not gonna have an effect, and I don't know what it would be if it were to be non-extended.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chenard?
Just a comment, because now we can extend it for 3 years instead of coming in front of council all the time. I think it's something relatively new. Because before we used to have to do exemptions relative, so this is for 3-year extension. Is there any? No, it's not new.
No.
Okay.
Not new.
It is new for them.
No.
Okay. Carry on. Let's vote.
Just to Councillor Chenard's point, I think previously we did have one last year or the year before because of the building that they were in. They had a portion, but this is regard the actual golf course. So, Councillor Wilkinson.
Okay, through the chair, I really like Councillor Byers' question. Like, I would really like to know what their assessment would actually be. Like, I know it doesn't really matter on our books, but I would just like to know that as a point of interest as to what we are offering to the golf club, really, by doing this.
Certainly, I think maybe add to that. I think in the future, we can certainly add that as part of the report and can get that information for council in short order as well.
Councillor Bennett.
Through the chair. Last time we done this 3 years ago, that question was brought up and we were given an answer of what the taxes would be so that we could exempt them. So if you go back in your notes, you could find it from 3 years ago if you saved them that long, but it is there.
But it would vary now because there's no building up there or anything. So I'd like to know.
It
for
is, but I
this
mean, it
year.
doesn't
Yeah.
affect us. So I mean, I'm not even worried about it. It was affecting our tax rate. Fine, but it's not even gonna affect us, so.
All right. I think it's more for interest's sake. than-
It's more
Well, it's
interesting.
interesting, I think, for the golf club to realize this
All
is
right,
our
we'll
exemption.
move on. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Passy. Can I motion please that council set the public auction date for the recovery of unpaid property taxes as of September 29th, 2020? Councilor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Talked about it at committee. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve the transfer of $186,000 to the 2020 emergency COVID-19 budget from the emergency COVID-19 reserve fund? Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. And we do have our general manager of protective and community services, Guy Latour, with us to walk us through it. Go ahead, Guy.
Through the council through the chair to the council, we talked about this at the August 4th committee meeting. The staffing was for pool September to December is 88,000, receptionist from September to December 22,000, and the remaining is lost revenue for July and August, and for some for September and December.
Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chenard.
Is there any additional cost? So yes, we're opening under COVID. So if we would have ran on a regular running year, it would have cost us this amount anyway. Is that correct?
It would cost us more.
It would have cost us more. So in essence, opening for this short period of time from September to December. The only thing I'm looking at, it's 186,000, but there's 100,000 in wages. What is the, or sorry, what's the other about 79,000 for? Because it says total 185.
Yep, so under lost revenue,
Yes.
For arena, pool and kiosk for July and August, our original budget was, for the emergency COVID budget, was just till the end of the June for lost revenue.
Gotcha.
And then there's some additional lost revenue from pool and kiosk area from September to December that we talked about in the pool reopening. So that's the additional amount. It's all lost revenue that we wouldn't be recouping due to our operations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, does this receptionist here, does that cover the, what's your name, coming back to take the bookings for the pool and everything else? They got your kiosk up front for the person there, then you got another person in the office back there.
The receptionist is for the 2 part-time receptionists that work at the kiosk, and not for Rose, who does the
Not for
bookings.
Rose, yeah.
Rose has been with us for the
Rose, okay,
yeah, the whole
I just
time.
wondered, yes.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Just a comment for me, I'm happy that we're going to be reopening the facility and giving something positive for people to do. I think the plan that administration has put forward and staff worked really hard on is going to be really good. I know people have to adjust, and it may not be the easiest to adjust to, but it'd be good to have some positive activities in our community. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please? The council approve the transfer of $6,319.63 from the Public Safety Initiative Reserve Fund to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency budget to cover the costs of the operating the Homeless Out of the Cold initiative in 2020. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything you want to add, Mr. Latour?
Through the chair to council, I have nothing to add to the reports in front of me.
I think, nope. I got my
Councillor
question answered
Curry?
right here.
Councillor Curry, please don't interrupt Councillor Schumer.
Through the chair, just to clarify, so is this gonna be ran the same way that we ran it last winter? So this is the same concept?
Through the chair to Councillor Curry, that is our intention right now. We're looking at options for location, and we still haven't completely confirmed what the temperature will be, and we'll have to come back and get confirmation on that. But other than that, it'll be pretty much the same operation.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Bevan and then Councillor
I had the
Sorensen.
same questions Councilor Curry did.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, shouldn't have the January to March number have already been in our budget? I don't understand why it wasn't.
Through the chair to council, we've never budgeted for this, and we ran it, we did it without any budgeted amount, so that's why we've come back to cover the costs for that.
Through to Councillor Sorensen's point, when we initially set this up, it was in January after budget was passed. So
Right.
there wasn't a necessary budget line. We just said go and get it done. So
I see. But at the time, we didn't approve the money for it.
we approved money, but there wasn't a budget. Wasn't actually in the budget. Councillor Schnarr.
I have a question now. So how much are we paying rent for this building? And I'm thinking because this is something good if we've looked at purchasing a building, or is it more economical for us to rent?
Yes, so we pay $1,500 for the pickup and delivery of the building. I believe it was $300 a month roughly for the rental.
Okay. So it's cheaper to rent.
At this point, I believe we did cost out, and this is not an exact number, but it was somewhere between $16,000 and $21,000 to purchase that unit if we wanted to purchase a similar unit.
And I think through to Councillor Schnarr's point, part of our discussion when we discussed this a number of months ago was that we wanted to run it for one more year to see how it goes, and then make a decision at that point if we look at something permanent, if we look at purchasing a unit such as this, or continue with the status quo. So, all right. Thank you once again to staff for the work on this. I think it's good that we'll have it up and running earlier in the year and hopefully get some usage out of it. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please? The council adopt the strategic planning session progress matrix as presented. Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Wilkinson.
I'm just wondering with that, developing Third Avenue as a thoroughfare, how's that coming along? I do have people questioning me about that fairly regularly. It's under, it's on the first sheet under high economic development. Commercial revitalization.
Go ahead, Sue. Fair
Thank
comment.
you through the chair. At this point, I think I would just say that the report that's before you is just to indicate the relative priority to each other. So I'm not prepared to kind of give a detailed report of each or any specific item, other than to say that we've been using these principles and priorities already to guide our activities. If it was the will of council, we could certainly bring an update forward to council on that item.
Okay, it's just, we discussed it 2 strategic plans ago, and so I'd like to know. I don't know if the rest of council does.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to administration, I just want to say thanks again for bringing this forward. I think it's really great communication piece between council and administration, and perhaps if you find value out of it as well, that's even a bonus. Because I certainly appreciate knowing where things kind of stand amongst each other.
Great. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the sanitary sewer outflow update report for information? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. We have our operations manager, Mitch Ham, with us to give us an overview of an unfortunate situation at the wastewater treatment plant.
Good evening, council. Just to bring you up to date here, July 9th, we started experiencing some issues with our lagoon outflow, which travels 2.5 kilometers east of town from our lagoon to the McLeod River, carries our effluent water, clean water that goes into the McLeod River. At that point, we had a break on the embankment, and a few items have kind of become more clear over time, and I just wanted to update you on how that's been going. So ultimately, we have a bit of a tricky situation. We're working with Mineral Engineering and Stantec Geotechnical to find out what's going on with the slip in the bank. That'll help us define how we're going to move forward with the project and how we'll be engineering a solution to this problem. But to put it lightly, we're nowhere near having all the information we need to make that determination. So currently, we're just trying to get a temporary solution in place so we're not paying a large amount per day in charges to a contractor to oversee the site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to administration, was this part of the project changed when the wastewater treatment plant was in place, or was it already pre-existing?
Pre-existing since 1982.
All right, thank you, Councillor Chenard.
Through to Mitch, the chair. Current estimate $1 million. I hate when we see surprise numbers. Do we have any, how soon will we have more definite answers than just $1 million? Because I'm just looking at 2.5 feet of pipe. Do we have to replace it all? So how close is the $1 million?
We'd be replacing approximately 500 meters of the outflow through a directional drill.
Right.
This is based loosely on estimates of what we know for that distance for a directional drill of this nature and size. We're incurring costs currently for just stabilization and prepping of the site. So the $1 million estimation is currently the best I can do, but I mean, that's relatively accurate.
Okay, I was just curious because I hate when we see that, and I fully understand that you only can do estimates. So thank you for your answer.
Councillor Curry and then Councillor Byer.
Through the chair, Mr. Ham, have you had any success getting the $2 million for the waste treatment plant that the government owes us?
We'll have to defer that one to Mr. Derrick.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Curry, no, not as of yet. I will say that we have had what I would describe as good dialogue, positive dialogue with the provincial ministry on this. We have not yet received a firm commitment, or there's no money in the bank account yet, but we just are endeavoring to keep this on their radar and make sure that this remains an issue before the minister for his consideration. I don't know, Mayor, if you have anything to add from
I
your
have
perspective.
nothing new to add, other than we met a month ago, and he assured us he's going to look further into it and see what can be done, but there was no commitments. Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to administration, so I had kind of had a follow-up. I'm hoping that maybe there'd be some warranty if it was a recent project, but it wasn't. Do we have any thoughts about this being covered under insurance at all? Possibly.
Through the chair, we're exploring all options, from insurance to grants and as many options as we can look into.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, it's probably really a naive question, but like, why would this have happened? Any guess?
So we are currently in the inference stage. So we have geotechnical surveys to do and bank stabilization to understand. Our best information that we have right now is that due to the moisture level of the last precipitation of the last 2 years, if you notice the embankment of the McLeod River on all the way through the Edson area, we were noticing quite a large destabilization of the area, and we're making an assumption that that's attributing to the issue. There is also the fact that this is a 40-year-old pipe and it's on a very steep embankment, and there are a lot of factors at play. So we're hoping to do the science so that we have a correct determination. We're also working with the landowner and to maintain good communication and a good relationship through this process. So.
Thank you very much for the explanation. I appreciate it too.
Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, by the sounds of it, by using directional drilling, you won't be on the surface anymore and potentially avoid this situation in the future. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Our intention is to mitigate any future slippage of the bank to have this type of an effect on the future.
All right, thank you. Any other further questions, comments, or concerns? I thought pipes only had 16-year lifespans.
It's HDPE, which is unique.
For those that don't understand what I'm saying, it's a joke based on the assessment review model where they're saying
Yeah.
tax for 16 years on a pipe.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ham. Yeah, it's another stroke. Nobody's gonna get
I don't know what that
that.
means.
I got it.
Obviously, a very serious situation and unfortunate. So something we'll have to keep in mind as we're looking at our projects for next year. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please? The council give first reading to bylaw number 2250 being the mandatory facial covering bylaw. Councillor Curry will make that motion. And CEO Derricott, if you want to give us an overview of this bylaw and what it means.
Thank you, Your Worship, through council. This is an issue that we've seen raised in many of our colleague municipalities in the province. And so in response to this, as our emergency coordination center met to discuss this potential, we reviewed a number of those parameters that are existing in some municipalities, particularly in the Edmonton area, who have gone through this process, whereby we learned kind of structures of their bylaw and some of the parameters under which this would be considered. A few things to note here, after what we have seen some healthy public online dialogue regarding the principles at play here. I just want to reinforce for council or any members of the public that this is not a direct enactment of a requirement for the public to wear facial coverings. This is in response to escalating risk levels in our community. So at this point, we would consider our community to be in a low risk under the parameters of this bylaw. No active cases currently, and no other mitigating factors that we feel would put our community at significant risk. As long as our community was to remain in that state, we would not enact the practice of mandatory facial coverings in our community. This does allow us to respond quickly and proactively should the risk profile of our community change. And I think that's the key intent of this bylaw, is to allow the Emergency Coordination Center to take in information and respond in a timely manner. We know that we have seen in a number of communities that those risk profiles can change relatively quickly. And so this proactive measure, I think, puts us in the best possible place to respond to this. Attached as a part of the bylaw are a schedule outlining what the parameters are for considerations of what a low risk environment is, what a medium risk environment is, and what a high risk environment is in relation to COVID-19 pandemic. And so some of the principles that we would consider before moving from a low risk to a medium risk are the number of infections. At this point, we've identified 10 active cases of COVID-19 in our community as a key consideration. However, it's not the only consideration. The location and type of the infections, for example, are they localized in a single facility or in a single isolated incident, or are they community spread? Those have different risk profiles. The impacts on hospitals, schools, other public facilities would be considered. The profile of the risk in neighboring communities, Hinton, Whitecourt, Yellowhead County, and how those may impact our risk profile. All of those may be considered as potential elements contributing to the risk level in our community and allow us to respond appropriately. Any change to the status of this bylaw would require a previous notification to the Emergency Management Committee, which is also council. So council would be immediately aware should a determination be made that the risk levels would change in our community. One of the key elements that is highlighted both in this bylaw and throughout our community response to the pandemic has been active and continual communication on the various parameters in place either at the provincial level or at the local level. Obviously, that would be a continual and ongoing effort to communicate based on the various risk levels, the parameters in place, or the considerations being undertaken. Should this change, there would obviously be a very active communication process to ensure that people would be made aware of the bylaw. The last point I think I would probably want to make before I entertain any questions from council would be any type of active enforcement such as fines, although the bylaw does allow for that, are what we would consider a last resort. Educational efforts would be the first approach that we would take to this to ensure that people know and are aware of the bylaw, and then invite them to follow the parameters under that before any enforcement actions would be taken. Relying mostly on the RCMP as our enforcement mechanism for the bylaw.
All right, thank you, CEO Dercott. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Swanson and Councillor Meyer.
So through the chair to council. I have to apologize for not being at the Emergency Management Advisory Committee last week, but I would like to express my concern with Schedule B. I did raise this with CEO Dercott. My concern is that Schedule B reads as a policy statement for what the ECC will do in a low, medium, and high risk situation. And I would hate for someone to quote Schedule B of the Mandatory Facial Covering Bylaw 2250 and say that during a medium risk situation, you must request Alberta Health Services to attend all meetings, you must request RCMP to attend all meetings, and just use this as a prescriptive policy document. Administration has assured me that it wasn't intended to be used that way. I just want council to be aware. I am in support of the general concept. I feel that Schedule B is written more like a policy statement on what ECC should be doing under a certain situation, rather than general guidelines for what would constitute a low, medium, and high risk situation.
Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. CEO Dercott, do you want to have any comment to that?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Sorensen and council. Certainly appreciate the comment, and it was, I think, helpful to have kind of fresh eyes to actually read it. With Councillor Sorensen, unfortunately not being privy to the previous conversation. I think the intent there has been communicated. Certainly administratively, the point is noted. I think we're comfortable. If anything's a minor wording change on the schedule from something like will focus to will consider, the following elements would not be a problem for administration. That being said, we are satisfied that the bylaw will function as is, but if council did feel strongly about it, I think we're talking about kind of a minor editorial change there.
Great, Councillor Curry.
Through the chair, Councillor Sorensen, can you just clarify for me your concerns with the wording, where it was specifically?
Well, through the chair to Councillor Curry. For instance, in the medium risk situation, it says during a medium risk level, the ECC operations will focus on the following. And so it's basically telling the ECC what they must do under a medium risk situation. In my mind, I have no problem with what it says. I mean, my point is that should be in an ECC policy document. It shouldn't be in Schedule B of a face mask bylaw. And I just worry that someone might quote this schedule and say we're not doing what ECC is supposed to be doing.
Okay, Councillor Byer?
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, I just got 2 questions. So the first one is, so it talks quite easily about how to move from a low risk to a medium risk. It is the same to move from a medium risk to a low risk, that if you just get below the 10 cases that you just get right back into low risk mode, or is there a certain procedure that would have to happen?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I think the process looks identical in terms of either escalating or de-escalating. All the risk factors will be considered, and once we determine that the risk has changed enough that we would make an adjustment either up or down, we would make that determination based on the information. I think that's important to note that if we were to reach 10 active cases, for example, and then move to a medium risk level and enact the facial covering bylaw, it does not follow that immediately upon going to 9 cases that we would necessarily identify the risk profile as low. That would be one of the elements that we would consider as we made that determination. Although I do think that the numbers are important and maybe the clearest indication of risk, and so they will be heavily weighted in those conversations. I just think it's important, and this may, in addition to Councillor Sorensen's point here, the intent of the ECC to include these parameters was we wanted it to not only be very clear to council, but also clear to the public that it's not just a simple arithmetic that's going to take place, that there is a more robust kind of decision-making process in place there. We wouldn't typically release this type of document, I think, in fairness to Councillor Sorensen's point. However, we just wanted to err on the side of transparency in this case so that people could see and understand as much as possible the types of thought processes that would contribute to our either escalation or de-escalation of the risk levels in our community.
Councillor Byer?
And the follow-up is, so if I didn't have the opportunity to read this before the Emergency Management Advisory Committee meeting. So a question regarding if we move to a medium risk level and it would be mandatory to wear facial coverings in public spaces, what would that look like for walking on the trail systems? Is that considered physical exercise and it would be required, or is that considered a public space?
At this point, the bylaw only contemplates indoor public spaces. So outdoor activities are exempt other than which would be covered this bylaw. There's still the general guidance from the Public Health Authority that anytime you cannot maintain 2 meters of distance that you would consider wearing a face mask. I believe the language is strongly recommend that in those cases. For these purposes, this is focused on public spaces that are indoor that the public have access to. It also clarifies in the bylaw that if there are other mitigating factors in place, such as barriers and that co-workers wouldn't necessarily need to wear these masks if they were behind appropriate other physical measures in place. We use the example of here in the town office. If a member of the public comes in, as long as the barriers here are all in place, that the staff here wouldn't necessarily have to wear a mask just because someone walked into the space. The member of the public would be required to do so, but not necessarily those working or serving in a particular space. Again, as long as the appropriate physical barriers and other measures are in place.
All right, Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, further to your point on pure arithmetic decisions, I noticed that low risk is below 10, medium risk is above 10, but there is no risk level for exactly 10 cases.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. You did note that as well. I'm given that the intent of this are guiding principles rather than specific triggers, we're satisfied, but it is noted that that is a mathematical gap in the parameters there.
All right, any other questions? Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, it says in aquatic activities, I believe, would you expect the public to wear a mask into Repsol right up until the point they're changing, and then consider that they're at a aquatic activity and then take the mask off?
Go ahead, Stuart Ericott.
Thank you through the chair. Generally, yes, I think we would, if the mandatory facial coverings clause in this bylaw was enacted, I think that we would have them wear a mask on entry of the facility to the various changing areas. It's no different for hockey. You don't have to wear it while you're actually participating. But I think we would say at minimum to the dressing room, and then once you're leaving the dressing room onto the ice, and then as soon as you leave the change room to the dressing room, any other time you're in the facility, you would be required to wear a mask. I think we do maintain flexibility to adjust that as a matter of practicality in relation to various activities that do take place.
All right, thank you, Councillor Schnarr, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Just to, through the chair, just to clarify for Councillor Sorensen, the other thing we have to factor in, if we did hit that medium and high threshold, we would also have to consider closing a lot of these public places. So it's sort of something in place to be proactive. So we're not running into an emergency, because certain areas it just explodes, you know, and you go from 0 to 10 overnight. So some of the cases we may be just considering closing them altogether, temporary measures. So that would help to answer your question. If we hit medium, we would probably consider closing a lot of these public places due to health consideration.
Stuart Ericott.
Thank you. And if I may add to the point that Councillor Schnarr has made here, we're very early in this process. We made the determination that if schools were to be closed, it didn't make sense for us to have Repsol Place closed. We've evolved in our situation somewhat since that time. Now that Repsol Place has all kinds of protocols in place and parameters to keep people safe there, we will not necessarily close that facility. If the schools close, it will be one of the factors that we might consider. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that it's no longer kind of that very direct link. We don't have any information at this point suggesting what schools' risk tolerances will be. Is one infection going to close down schools, or 2 or 10? And so if there was a single infection and that was enough for a school closure, we're probably not responding to that by closing facilities at that point until there was additional risk exposures that manifest themselves. But that was more just for a general awareness that we feel comfortable that all the work that our staff has done to put protocols in place would allow us to respond a little bit differently now than we could in March.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Chair, just a comment, really. I think communication is going to be such a key thing, as you were mentioning, Councillor Byer, when we come out of it and go down the other way. That's going to be very important to communicate to the public. But I do feel we're really not inventing anything new. Other municipalities are doing this as well. And nobody knows really what it's all going to evolve into. I think we really have to think common sense and just work that way. And at our meeting, what some of the things maybe that are upsetting now, we did want to assure that we were notified first before this came into effect, unlike our neighboring municipality where it went into effect and council had no idea it was happening. So I'm glad that we are all part of this as a team.
Thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to council and administration, I forgot to mention right from the beginning that I believe council and administration should be commended for being proactive on this issue and having clear criteria up front. Whether 2 years from now we can argue whether the criteria is correct, I believe this is the right approach, and it can be amended based on provincial guidelines that might come out in a month or two. But this is a good step, and council and administration should be commended.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Well, my turn to speak now. There's been a lot of commentary on Facebook. Some unfortunate commentary that was actually quite troubling to see. But I would really like to thank the people that actually read the bylaw and took the time to understand what we were trying to accomplish here. I think this strikes the right balance. As long as we continue the efforts of physically distancing and hand sanitization, doing what we've been doing, our community should be proud of having only 2 active cases in 5 months. And that speaks to people working together to prevent this from happening in our community. To hit 10 cases in a community our size, I think would be significant, as we see cities like the size of St. Albert, they're only at 10, 13 cases at any one time. So if we're hitting 10 in a small community like ours, there's an issue someplace. And we have to do whatever we can to help protect one another. We got to stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about the most vulnerable and other people in the community. I personally hate wearing masks. I find it very uncomfortable. I don't like things covering my face. I don't like wearing toques in the wintertime to cover my face, but this is the right thing to do. And we just need to continue the efforts so this bylaw doesn't have to be enacted. I do have one thing to note is this bylaw does have an end date of March 31st, 2021. And so at that point in time, this bylaw will cease to exist unless the circumstances warrant an extension of that bylaw. We don't know what next month holds. With schools reopening could change the world, or hopefully we'll continue on the path that we are here in our own community of not seeing any cases. But if we do, we need to do what's outlined here. I'm very comfortable that we have the right balance here. Most people that I've chatted with about this and explained what we're doing, they're like, oh, that makes sense. The only concern I have is under the exemptions, there should be an exemption for health concerns. That's not clearly stated in 4.1. There's a number of different exemptions in there. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know people's individual circumstances. I know people have different ailments, COPD and that sort of thing. I don't know, administration, if you can speak to that, but I really feel strongly that we need a 4.17 that would include health situations, something that I did not catch when we did talk about this at the ECC last week.
Thank you, Your Worship. To be frank, this was the most challenging part of the conversation at the administrative level. It was informed somewhat by the City of Edmonton's misadventure with exemption cards and the effort to accommodate those who have real and significant health-related issues that may be exacerbated or irritated by wearing a mask. At the end of the day, we understand that the medical community is hesitant to issue or to get involved with writing exemptions or participating in writing exemptions. And we certainly do not feel that municipal staff or enforcement officers are equipped to evaluate medical exemptions. As we discussed this and reviewed this, we did not find very much substantial evidence to suggest that there are many whose cases of a medical instance would warrant an exemption under this policy. And then to think about how we might enforce that or challenge that became, in our estimation, more problematic than helpful. I recall when the City of Edmonton was dealing with this, and I think it was a Wednesday, they came out with a public statement of kind of reinforcing the program and saying we're relying on the good nature of Edmontonians to make the right choice here. And if I can just be frank, that was a program that was clearly abused and was clearly problematic. And that was just a loophole that we didn't feel we had the capacity to appropriately address. And we are well aware that this leaves the potential for individual circumstances that may be additionally uncomfortable. And I think that we would require those individuals to interact with places of business on an individual basis and perhaps address mitigations in that manner. And there may be some possibilities to deal with some of that in that way. But I guess ultimately what I'm saying is I wish there was some simple or easy answers to this question. I don't believe that there is. And we felt the most important principle combined with an evaluation of our capacity was that it be difficult for people to not wear masks as the more primary focus of our efforts there. But we are very cognizant of the fact that there will be a very few circumstances where this will create some challenges.
All right, Councillor Curry.
Through the chair, I would have to say that I agree with Mr. Dercott. I think adding that in would create, and I've seen it on Facebook and seen it in the other municipalities, there are very, very few medical conditions where you safely cannot wear a mask. And a lot of people think that they have medical conditions that they can't, and the evidence is not there. And I think that that would just create a clause that people would use it as I have a medical condition. And I think in 4.13, where it says persons providing care or assistance to a person with a disability where a face covering could hinder, where somebody does have it, I think that often where you would have those people with true medical issues that can't wear it, I think it is that they're wearing oxygen or something of the such. And I think they would also be able to really explain why. But I think that clause would just give the masses who don't want to wear a mask, would just use it as an out. So I think it just is not, and I think that there's not actually very much evidence to show that there's very many conditions that prevent you from wearing a mask.
All right, Councillor Schnarr.
Thank you for the comments. I'm agreeing what you're all saying, but the one thing that we have to stress when we discussed the bylaw, we were giving ourselves power with a minimal fine, and we're going to focus more on education. So this thing is in case we have an individual that is blatantly could be affected, and then we have some kind of power to enforce it. So our key role is, as we were brought up, is all about educational. So you brought up very interesting points, and I have to agree with all of your comments. Who are we? We are not medical experts to say, can you or can you not wear it? So as long as we focus on education first, and then if somebody, this just gives our bylaw enforcement, RCMP a bylaw, in case we have an extreme case where we've heard about Facebook in the news where an individual is just saying, I'm ignoring it regardless. And, just trying to prove a point, we have something to prove back to them.
CEO Dercott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this, my thoughts on this are a little bit, as expressed by Councillor Sorensen, in a different context. 2 years from now, we'll know whether or not this is constitutional or
Yes.
stands up to court challenges and those types of things. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we don't have visibility. This is not something that has been tested or followed through some of those important processes. We would all love to have the parameters that would allow us to speak with more clarity and more confidence on some of these issues. Unfortunately, they just don't currently exist. I suspect they will in the not too distant future, but at this point, we're making our best estimations with the primacy of protecting public health as the key focus for us.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Just as a comment, people also have a choice. They don't need to go to any of these places. if they choose not to wear a mask, they can have groceries delivered home, etc. So it isn't like we're mandating in your home you're wearing a mask or anything like that. It's just for public safety, period.
Thank you. And to that point, Councilor Wilkinson, you make a very good point, is that we do have a number of delivery services now available in our community. One of those is free through the Friendship Center, so people can utilize that
That's wonderful.
if they cannot wear a mask. And it's actually to protect them if they stay home and get those groceries delivered. So thank you for that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get second reading to bylaw number 2250? Councilor Chenard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get placement for third? Councilor Beyer, all those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get third reading of bylaw number 2250 being the mandatory facial covering bylaw? Councilor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, the council proceed in instituting the Town of Edson COVID-19 Small Business Loan Program in partnership with Community Futures West Yellowhead and accordance with the attached loan program proposal to be funded from the COVID-19 Recovery Reserve. Councillor Bevan will make that motion, and we do have Nancy joining us from West Yellowhead Community Futures to walk us through this. Thanks for hanging out for the last 50 minutes, Nancy. I'm sure.
Oh, my pleasure. That was interesting.
And you're in Jasper, right? So you understand all about face coverings.
Yes, I know all about it, and I wear my mask all the time, but actually I am in Hinton tonight. As you probably knew, the road was closed for a good portion of the day, so the traffic is very slow. So I'm at the office.
All right, well, go right ahead.
Okay, well, we have worked on this very hard. My colleague and our new hire, Edson business liaison, Heather Coates, has joined us in the last couple of weeks, and Heather worked really hard on this. And we met with administration last week to review the feedback that you gave us in June and also to bring back a proposal. We have kept the mission of the program much the same. Our goal at Community Futures with yours is to help as many people as possible during the recovery period of COVID-19 and also to prepare for the road ahead in 2020 and 2021. So to get into the details of the program, this program will run from September 15th to March 31st, 2020. It will be in the amount of $300,000 to loan to Community Futures. We would administer the loan on your behalf, and loan amounts right now we're suggesting between $1,000 and $15,000, and will be allotted to individuals depending on the project that they bring forward in their application. Loans will be at a fixed interest rate of 3%. Applications will be submitted electronically through our new loan portal that we've been using since we've been working with the RRF application. And all decisions will be made by Community Futures regarding the loan. We listened to what you said when we met in June, and what we looked at was what are the things that businesses can use the loan for. So anything that is proposed with regards to leasehold improvements or property changes, we're asking for administration to assist us on that. We want to make sure that everything that's done is within the bylaws of the municipality. And also to any physical or external requirements or renovations that is done by the business, that they use a professional contractor to do that work. Also, given the discussion that we had in June, we looked at each fiscal year that we're in. So for Community Futures, we go on the government fiscal year and we end in March 31st of each year. And so in the first year of the program, 75% will go towards existing or expanded businesses. 25% of the dollars would go towards new startup. And the second year of the program, any remaining dollars would be 50%, 50%. And then in the last year of the program, it would be 25% towards existing and expanding business models and 75% to new startup businesses. Our understanding is that If we get a client that pays us back very quickly, that would put more money into the pool, and we would just, within that 3-year time period, continually lend out money as it becomes available, so that we're constantly making loans over a 3-year period. I realize on page 2, under the cost of loans, we contradict ourselves between the 15,000 and the 25,000. I think that was because we debated it so extensively on what to present to you. And so I'm really going to put it back to council to say what the limit should be on this loan. I think after speaking to administration, we need to look at whether or not we want to help a lot of businesses a little bit, or a few businesses a lot, is what the quote I'm taking directly from administration. And I think that is the will of council on what you wish to see as the higher limit on the loan application. It will be interest-free for the first 180 days. And then at the 181st day, clients will be charged interest and will be required to make payments. The goal is, of course, that we are doing quick loans, and that clients may be able to pay us back within the 180-day period that is still interest-free, and that'll give us more money to lend to more businesses. For those that are for eligibility costs, you will see that we have businesses and nonprofits within the town of Edson. We're asking that only eligible businesses that have business licenses with the municipality are eligible to apply. Any kind of business structure is eligible. Businesses and nonprofits who have experienced significant delays in daily operations, mainly in regards with their revenues as of March 17th, 2020, which was the day the state of emergency was declared in the province. And these include, but are not limited to, physical changes to their business, increased PPE costs, and limited customer access to the business due to COVID-19 measures. We are requesting a minimum gross annual revenue of $5,000 annually to be part of this loan, and a $25 application fee. Anyone that has received funding through recovery benefits from other federal programs, including Community Futures loans, are going to be eligible to apply for this loan. However, it needs to go back to the business on their due diligence to ensure that they're not claiming expenses that they've claimed on other relief programs. And we are finding that that is really up to the business to ensure that they're CRA compliant. And also we recommend that businesses work with their accountants to make sure that their expenses are covered appropriately. So project expenses not limited to website, apps, social media development, with a list there of what can be included. Increase any costs that increase their revenue streams and change their business models. Any costs associated with physical and external modifications related to COVID-19, costs associated with PPE requirements, training and support requirements for both employers and employees, and anything that supports business diversification in the community, as long as it shows evidence of a long-term commitment to the town of Edson. And then there gives another list there of project expenses that are not ineligible. Again, we go back to that, ensuring that clients that apply for the town of Edson loan are not using those expenses that they've used on other federal programming. And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Nancy, for taking the time this evening. I know you're a very busy lady. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns? CEO Derricotte, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, just before you turn it over to council, I do have one other. You'll note in the report before you that it just notes at the end that one of the elements that council expressed interest in is to know what the COVID-19 recovery reserve would look like, and that was directly related to our ability to collect the taxes as we normally would. Unfortunately, we can't know that for certain until the due date comes at the end of September. However, we did do some work to look at past years to see what it looked like in the last month of tax recovery, and so we can perhaps draw some analogies there. I will stress that this is not a normal year, and so this is probably not a perfect comparison, but it's the best information that we have. So just for reference, in a typical year, our taxes are tax notices are sent out in mid-May. On June 1st of last year, we still had 90% of taxes outstanding. So that's about 1 month from that period of time to the due date. 2 weeks later, we were at 76% outstanding. And then by the time the due date came along, we were at 27% outstanding. So we could see that just about 50% of the taxes were paid in that last 2-week period. And so even though now, Mr. Passy, can you please remind me where we're at this year currently? Just over 50% now. So under the circumstances, we feel fairly positively towards that number, and if the trends as we see here were to continue, that we feel that we're going to successfully collect the vast majority of the taxes owing to the municipality. So our confidence that council allocating this $300,000 to this program is quite stable, and that it would not impact detrimentally the COVID reserve in the future.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Through the chair to Nancy. Thank you for your presentation. One question is where you had commented if we should put smaller loans to more businesses or lease amount to higher. How much interest have we had so far? Like, this has been out in work. Have you getting a lot of interest that are looking for this particular help what we're offering?
Yes, we did actually have a few phone calls after our mayor announced it on Facebook, but we had to reassure people that we were working on it and it would come. I do think that there is a need for this in the community, and I think we'll see that we'll have a good uptake on it.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Sorensen and Councillor Curry.
Through the chair to Nancy, I apologize if it's in here and I've just missed it, but is debt serviceability a criteria for the loan? Like, do they have to prove that they're solid enough to repay it? Or is it, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's a very good question. And when we do our analysis on all our loans, and Councillor Bevan sits on our investment review committee, so he would be able to back this up a little bit. We do the due diligence of the business to ensure that the business is viable and that the client is able to repay back the debt. It is irresponsible of us as an organization to lend to people that are unable to pay back the funds. So that would be something in our due diligence of the analysis of the client that we would make that decision.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Curry.
Through the chair. Hi Nancy, thank you. And thank you so much for the changes you guys made. They look fantastic. Just further to what Councillor Chenard had said, are you finding that 15,000 threshold is enough? Or are you finding that more are needing the 25,000 just based on the other loans that we've done?
I can say for the RRF loan that we administered on behalf of the Government of Canada, that the majority of people came to us requesting the 40,000 for the full amount and had enough eligible expenses to require that 40,000. So if you made the loan, whatever you make the maximum to be, I think that businesses will come forward with those expenses. Now, it's up to us to ensure that those expenses are eligible and that they're able to repay back the debt. I think it would be in good conscience for this loan to try to serve as many people as possible. However, if it's really, you know, your business community, and I think you need to know whether or not 25,000 is the top or if it should be 15. I mean, if we do the math, we would serve 20 businesses with $15,000. So with $25,000, you'd serve 12 businesses.
Okay, Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, thank you, Nancy, and just to get back to Councilor Sorensen here in that, when we do our IRC and stuff like that, we have 4 of the councilors on there. And we do a very, very good background check on, as Nancy does with Tim, and we ask a lot of questions in that. And if we're unsure, we do not approve it or whatever, we send it back, and we ask for more questions, they do come back to us. So it is a very good report we get, it's very good what we do in that. And we've helped a lot of people out in the past. I like this. I think we can help a lot more out. Thank you, Nancy, to you and your crew that does it. It's, I know it's a lot of work sitting on that board of what you guys go through. So I do support this 100%.
All right, if there's no other questions, I'll make a comment here. Did you already comment? Did you already comment on this?
Sure.
Okay.
My recommendation is to, sorry.
I was gonna speak,
Oh,
but you already had a chance to comment, so.
Your turn.
My thought is, we do the 25,000. We'll see what kind of interest there is, and then we can reassess towards the end of this budget year. If there's a lot of interest, then we can see what our response reserve is at, or make adjustments at that point in time. I stated right off the top that I think 300,000 was low, and I think we should be looking at a $500,000 program. But let's see how this goes first and see what tax collection is. But I want to make sure that if we are helping, that we are setting them up for success. And I know that things aren't cheap nowadays, especially if you are trying to do the online marketplace stuff. It takes a significant effort from both an advertising perspective and an infrastructure perspective. So that's where my thought is at, but certainly willing to hear what council has to say. Councilor Sorensen.
Through the chair, I really wish I would have went first because my recommendation was the 15,000. I feel anything over that, you're getting into significant equipment or just major costs. And I think with $15,000, you can do a lot of barriers and rerouting of customers and advertising, and you can create a website. So my recommendation is the 15,000.
Through to Councilor Sorensen, let's split the difference and go with 20. Councilor Shinara.
I go with the 25 because when you talk to people like where we think it's inexpensive, depending on the size of your business, that extra cost of protection is costing people a lot of money. And where they're suffering is where businesses have to run full staff, but it can only open half capacity. So 25 is probably better. As far as them being able to survive or not, if we don't help them, we've already sentenced them. So some of the ones like where Nancy mentioned that we need to look at them, but if you look at their past 6 months of business, they're all going to be horrible. So we have to, I presume you guys do a great job of looking back in previous histories, but 25, and I've also echoed the mayor's. If we go 300,000 and we collect our taxes, we need to do 200 to help our businesses. We may have to go up to the full 500.
All right, we've heard 3 perspectives. Anybody else? Councilor Byer.
To the chair, to council. I'm in favor of the $25,000 limit. I feel that a business should know if they can't afford the full 25, if they're not asking for full 25. And I also share the mayor's perspective that if we max out on this by the time budget comes around and there's an opportunity to increase it, then we can revisit that information as we get it.
All right, Councilor Bellin.
I'll also support the 25,000 for the same reasons and that. And if we find out that we need more and we can do more, then that's the time to look at it. We can go to 5,000 or whatever we need to do. So I will support the 25,000.
Okay. Councilor Wilkinson or Curry.
I'd like to serve more people, but I will support the 25,000 because I think you really don't get very far at 15,000 nowadays. And thank you, Nancy, for your preparation.
Councilor Curry.
Well, I was leaning towards the 50.
I was too, but
For the same reasons, like I like the idea of being able to support more. But I'm also an optimistic person, and I think we're gonna have that 25 back fast in 180 days. So we'll have it back into, that's where my optimism is gonna go with the great payback, so we can put it back and then also be comfortable at the end of budget season to look and see, and if we've had extreme uptake, to put more in. So I will support 25.
All right. To that point too, and that's just the maximum. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get 25,000. Some might only need 5 or 10. So I'm just really interested to see what kind of take we have on this and where we go and what we can learn from this. At the end of the day, we've made some major sacrifices, especially our staff. I can't stress that enough to allow this to happen. So with everybody working together, hopefully we're going to be able to enhance our business community through this. And I know that today in the meeting with Minister Madu, Emily Long spoke about how impressed he has been with the town of Edson taking the initiatives that we have on the business side to try to support our business community. So thank you, Nancy, for your presentation. I think you know what the number is. I'll call the question. Unless
I want to clearly state it for me so there's no confusion, please, Your Worship.
council has agreed to 25,000 and
Okay.
assess at the end of the year.
That works great. And if I could say thank you to council for being so innovative and having the ability to take an idea that made you probably a little uncomfortable and just go with it. It's great. I love the chance that you're taking and the risk that you're taking to build your community. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Edmund, do you have anything else you want to add or you're good?
No, thank you. It's been great working with Nancy and her team. I think one of the challenges we always had at the administrative level was how well set up we were as a municipality to engage business community and recovery and response efforts. And I think this is a great way to mitigate our lack of capacity there by working with Nancy and her team, and we're excited to see how this program can support the community.
All right, thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Council committee reports. We're going back to August the 22nd. Let's start with Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair, I think you mean July 22nd.
July 22nd. Why didn't I add August 22nd?
I had 2 meetings, July 28th at an Emergency Management Advisory Committee and August 11th at a committee of the whole.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
July 23rd had an IRC meeting, and in that meeting, with our rough thing here, Community Futures has given out $1,253,726.32 loans dispersed in our total region for 34. The breakdown is Hinton has 9, Jasper 12, Yellowwood County 6, Grand Cache 2, and Edson 5. And there is more people waiting, but we have spent all we have got from what we could put in and from anything else. 11 businesses are waiting on the list right now on that, so we have to look at that, see what could go on. But we have done a lot of work on this in our rough loan and stuff like that, and a lot of businesses out there. And now we noticed getting back on their feet, and that $40,000 they got, it's coming back in and stuff like that, and they're starting to do business as close to normal as they can in that. But so far they're doing good in that, and that's where we look at everything when we do these loans, scrutinize very, very heavily in that. August 11th, 28th emergency management meeting, 11th call meeting, and the 13th emergency management meeting, and that is my report.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Beyer.
Thank you. July 28th, I had the Emergency Management Advisory Committee meeting. August 11th, the Committee of the Whole meeting, and August 13th, and the other Emergency Management Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
July 28th, I had the same meeting, the emergency management meeting. August 4th, I had an Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association meeting, a Zoom meeting for the afternoon. August 6th, I had a Zoom meeting for our Evergreen meeting. It's still unknown what date we're moving into Parkland Lodge. That will depend on the COVID agreement when we can move. And on the 11th, had a COW meeting, and then on the 13th, another emergency management meeting.
All right, thank you, Councillor Curry.
On the 28th, I also had the Emergency Management Committee meeting, and then Committee of the Whole on the 11th, and on the 13th, the Emergency Management Committee.
All right, Councillor Chouinard.
Can't find it in my calendar, so I'm gonna go by memory. I was at the COW meeting on August 11th, the emergency management meeting on 13th, and for the last 3 weeks, we've been failing at our Trans-Canada meetings because through this whole electronic stuff through the provinces, on our AGM, several of us, and one included, could not get in no matter way, shape, or form. The resolutions were brought up at the AGM for Edson's 2 moving forward. I was not there to represent him, so we tried again another failed meeting. This time I was in with the other group. So on our 3rd attempt today, they have been passed. They're in. I was elected the Alberta rep. So the resolution, just for memory, was the maintenance of through our town Highway 16 and traffic lights. And we were moving forward, but we were all very discouraged because when we're going across all the provinces, some zoomed in and we all know what it's like. It's horrible. So we did a conference call and we managed to make the meeting happen. So that's it for my report. And we all agreed that get this over with so we can all meet in a room like normal.
July 28th, emergency management meeting, emergency management on the 13th. CEO Derricott and I joined on a virtual call with AUMA regarding the assessment model review. AUMA shared their perspective of not being heard during this process. They were at the table. They suggested that they did have some alternative options that they presented, which were not listened to during the review. And talked about some of the frustrations and how they are not supporting what the government has put forward. Then later that afternoon, talked to MLA Long, who advised that he was able to get the Minister of Municipal Affairs to come out to Edson today to meet with myself along with the regional mayors of Woodlands County, Hinton, Yellowhead County, Whitecourt. We had what was supposed to be an hour-and-a-half meeting, lasted for 2 hours. I thought we had some really good dialogue with the minister. He certainly heard our concerns about this process. His perspectives are obviously a little bit different than our association's perspectives. And I have to thank MLA Long for arranging this meeting. We were the first community the minister visited on this. Without question, I think the minister was surprised that we didn't have the information he thought he had. So he has asked his department to share that information. The perspective of the provincial government is they need to do something to help oil and gas because these companies are going bankrupt and investments fleeing this province. So we had some discussion on what the best way of doing that is. I think he's pretty firm on moving forward with some sort of assessment change. Of course, as council's aware, there are the 4 options, A, B, C, and D. D would be absolutely devastating. So he wants to hear back from municipalities on which one they would prefer, or if they have an alternative option for him to consider to bring that forward. But the timelines are tight because they do want to proceed with this as quickly as possible. We shared that we would like more time to review and maybe do something temporarily until we can actually provide the appropriate feedback. So we'll see where that goes, but he certainly heard the concerns, and we shared the Edson perspective of revenue sharing and how devastating that would be to our community and how devastating this would be to Yellowhead County as it is presented. And we also share the concern that it seems like oil and gas seems to have the slight on this one, and they've been listened to more. He assured us he's never met with them since this review was underway. He's refused meetings with oil and gas. He's looking at data and information. So that was the perspective of the minister. CEO Derricott, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, Your Worship, I think you covered that very well. It was, I would describe it as a productive, if awkward meeting, given the circumstances. And, I think you characterized it accurately.
And I think we had some pretty frank and open discussion on our concerns. Go ahead,
Just a
Councilor.
question. You said this was the first meeting he had done with municipalities, and they want an answer by September 1st.
Yeah, so
Okay,
he's,
I'm just wondering. how
yeah,
you'll do
so
that.
he's gonna be visiting with other municipalities. Of course, MLAs are pretty engaged on this in rural
Mhm.
Alberta. But yes, the turnaround time, he's suggesting that he wants to hear within the next month what we want to do. They're sending us information that should be forthcoming. The concern was raised that everything that we have has RMA logo on it. It's not coming from the government. So what is the government's position on this? And we don't feel like this has been collaborative at all. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
But I think changes are coming. I just don't know what that's gonna look like. Councillor Chenard.
It's actually good, but I'm thinking like, oh my God, what are they thinking? It is now August, 18th, so we're like 12 days away and we're the first community. He's not aware of how many communities are in Alberta. Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. You'd be meeting with 3 and 4 per day and you still wouldn't get it all done. So hopefully they give an extension into October at least, because September 1 makes 0 sense.
He made comment that he's writing a letter to every single municipality, whether or not they're impacted by this, to provide feedback with all this background information that we've requested. Obviously, in our part of the province, this affects us a lot more than some of the other areas of the province. It was shared at the meeting today that there was a company that went bankrupt, didn't pay 3 years of taxes and still went bankrupt. So it was taxation issue, or is it business practices, or those sorts of things? So we also shared, we want to be a part of the solution. We support oil and gas, but this has to be a little bit more collaborative. And I think the minister got that message loud and clear. And that is my report. Can I get a motion, please? The council approve the 2019 year-end financial statements as presented. Councillor Wilkinson, and we do have Michael Passy with us to run us through this. We did discuss it at committee.
Yeah, so kind of Hartford that I guess came through Zoom and presented the financial statements. This is just here now for the formal approval of the financial statements as submitted to the person.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a comment to your staff there. I think it's absolutely phenomenal that she had no real recommendations for you to improve. Like, you've done very, very well. You make us proud. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Passy is not saying that, since this new manager of corporate services has come on.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? And further to Councillor Wilkinson's point, I know that we had a couple things in management letters and they've all been taken care of, and it was nice to see the strong position we're in. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Questions for media and public regarding items from this council meeting? Have we had anything emailed in? If anybody has questions about anything regarding this council meeting, you can email civiccenter@edson.ca and we will respond accordingly. On that note, can I get, actually, we're going to recess and then for 2 minutes, and then we'll go in camera. All right, can I get a motion to go into the closed meeting session? Councillor Bevan, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the medical center lease as discussed in camera? Councillor Sherrard will make that motion.
Yep.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. I will leave the room now for the next item due to a conflict of interest.
Okay, the other motion discussed in camera, Councillor Byers.
I'd like to make a motion that council, in line with the non-residential taxation exemption bylaw, confirm the commitment made for the development on a portion of the lands legally described as Southeast 1853-17 west of the Fifth, as discussed in the closed session of this meeting.
Okay, everyone understands the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. So we need you, Mayor. Okay.
You, Kevin.
All right. Motion for adjournment. Councillor Curry will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Motion carried.